In the 7.5 years we've been producing The Listening Post, we've looked at the media in many Spanish-speaking countries through our coverage of Latin America, but we've never really taken a close look at Spain and the media there. What got our attention: changes at the top of 3 of the most influential Spanish newspapers. 3 editors-in-chief let go in just 3 months at El País, El Mundo, and La Vanguardia. This story has angles both political and economic. The changes at El País and El Mundo came on the heels of their coverage of a corruption story that has had the government there on the ropes. And Spanish papers have been feeling the effects of a wider financial crisis as well as competition from the internet. Then there is the issue of conflicts of interest. Banks that have loaned the newspapers the money the papers need to survive end up owning shares in those media outlets. So how hard can the new editors of those newspapers push on the coverage of the financial sector and its relationship with Spanish politics? The Listening Post's Marcela Pizarro now from the Spanish capital, Madrid.
We are in the middle of a lot of storms. Our own economic crisis, the whole European economic crisis, and the media crisis.
We've gone through difficult situations where many very experienced journalists have lost their jobs as a result of the austerity measures. These are the times we have had to live through. We didn't choose them.
Every time someone is replaced because of political or economic interests, the ethics of journalism deteriorates. What we can expect from El Mundo, La Vanguardia, and El País is a loss of journalistic quality, a loss of objectivity.
And we have to survive in the middle of all these storms.
Last year, Spanish newspaper El Mundo had its own Watergate when it broke a huge political story, the Bárcenas affair. It was the story of secret cash payments to politicians from a slush fund, text messages that implicated Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy and had him fending off calls for his resignation. But it wasn't the Prime Minister who resigned. It was El Mundo's founder and editor, Pedro J. Ramírez, who had to step down. Ramírez said the reasons for his firing were political. But Pedro J., as he's known, is not the only editor-in-chief to have been shown the door recently. First, there was José Antich of La Vanguardia. Then there was Javier Moreno of El País, all in the space of 3 months.
Estos dos medios, los dos principales de España.
For the 2 most important papers in the country, El País and El Mundo, the moves are about plummeting sales. They've fired a lot of people, they've cut wages significantly, but they still have financial problems. At La Vanguardia, Spain's 3rd most important paper, the reasons are different. The editor was pro-independence in the region of Catalonia. The owner was not, and so he replaced him.
A lo que siempre ha sido La Vanguardia.
There is always politics behind a newspaper, and there is always economic power behind a newspaper. But I guarantee you there is nothing politic or economic or whatever kind of factive power behind the change of the editor of El País.
Es verdad.
It is true that the decision was taken at a time when El Mundo was being very critical of the government. Fundamentally, in the Bárcenas affair and within the establishment, there was a consensus against our paper. But the final decision was a corporate one.
Spain's mainstream press has had so many money worries, it's been hard to focus on journalism. Since the 2008 financial meltdown, advertising revenues have shrunk by 60%. Dozens of media outlets have closed, and thousands of employees have been laid off. Add to that the steep drop in circulation due to the rise in free digital alternatives. The paper's new directors are under some serious pressure to change things.
Así nosotros estamos matando al papel.
The problem is that we're committing suicide by charging for newspapers and not for online content. The public needs to realize that information cannot be free if it's going to be good. Quality journalism costs money. If advertising doesn't recover, we will have to charge the public or find an alternative, but we haven't found it yet.
Like all other media, we encouraged reading for free via the internet, but in the last few months we established a paywall, similar to that of the New York Times. But on other platforms, like mobile technology, we still have to develop new sources of revenue.
For Spain's news consumers who are skeptical of the written press, they could turn to TV. But there have been upheavals there too. When the Rajoy government came to power in 2011, a purge of state-owned TV followed. Large-scale redundancies, a trail of well-known journalists fired, and the removal of TVE's director Fran Llorente, whom the Conservative government accused of liberal bias. It wasn't the first time that an incoming government had changed things up at TVE. What was unprecedented was the extent of the restructuring. At a time when Spain's public has lost a lot of faith in its key institutions, judicial, economic, political, even the monarchy, it's the media's duty to hold those institutions to account. But for Spain's mainstream press, being that reliable watchdog is proving to be a challenge, because that crisis of credibility extends all the way to their doorstep. El País, founded in the post-Franco era, gained a reputation as the newspaper of democratic Spain. But its owners, Prisa, are facing debt problems and are partly owned by the banks, including Santander. That relationship has put the paper's journalism under the microscope. Recently, the Botín family, which runs Santander, was investigated for tax fraud. The story made news around the world. El País buried it deep inside the paper.
What is clear is that a newspaper that is completely dependent on someone who finances it is not going to question them. Self-censorship kicks in. I won't be reporting that story because my boss is going to get angry. And if someone does dare to report it, then the boss will get angry and will take action. The link between economic and financial sectors and the journalistic world means death for reporting. Death for journalism.
I mean, relax. Relax. I mean, we are not in the verge of destruction of democracy, really. We live in that kind of world where you need money from the banks. But to take a decision here and to lead this newsroom is a different matter. I take the decision of what I'm going to run freely, absolutely freely.
Absolutely freely. El País's readers will be the judges of that. Because in this, the age of austerity in Europe, the credibility of the media is just one more commodity that Spaniards are finding in short supply.
More Global Village voices now on journalism, particularly on the print side in Spain.
Ahora hay un resurgir del periodismo que busca apoyar a los movimientos ciudadanos alternativos por medio de la vía digital. En cuanto a los efectos de la crisis en el sector de la comunicación, hay muchísimos profesionales con muchísimo talento que no encuentran hueco, que están trabajando de freelance o de falsos autónomos con tal de hacerse nombre y tener su firma. Pero es brutal la dificultad que hay para abrirse camino en este mundo.
En el fondo, los propietarios son grandes corporaciones, fondos de inversión y bancos que defienden sus intereses. Esto se puede ver, por ejemplo, en el relato que se ha establecido sobre las políticas de austeridad y la crisis. Sí que se habla sobre las consecuencias dramáticas de la crisis y los recortes, pero se deja de lado las soluciones de sentido común y sobre todo las causas políticas y económicas. Esto ha afectado también al periodismo, que vive en un momento de grave precarización.